I was in a cover tune band in Indiana, and we used to cover the song Don't Cry since no one back there knew everyone was like GNR, but these were songs that weren't on the Appetite album. Shannon Hoon was the voice if any that captured the wildness, freedom and sorrow of 90s rock and roll. A wild spirit, a spark that burnt brightly but far too quickly to enjoy its own splendor. He had more than simply a distinctive voice, a haunting mix of softness, mystery, and raw passion. Defiant, impetuous, and constantly attracted to the darkest areas, he also exhibited all the characteristics of a hazardous artist. Shannon Hoon lived life too fast, too recklessly, from a wayward Indiana child, once fleeing the police following a drug raid to sharing the stage with Guns N' Roses to guiding Blind Melon to global success with No Rain. He didn't believe in limits, didn't mind repercussions, and wouldn't let anyone govern him. But that very stubbornness carried him from the brilliant stage lights to the tiny berth of a tour van, where he drew his final breath at barely 28, only 3 months after his daughter was born. Hoon never had the opportunity to grow old, or the time to atone. He was among the most delicate yet brightest voices in rock and roll, but what drove him into that inescapable spiral, and at the height of his renown, did he discover even a passing feeling of joy in those last moments? Early years. Born on September 26, 1967 in Lafayette, Indiana, a tiny town where life followed a safe, predictable cycle, Shannon Hoon. Most individuals here grew up, got steady employment, began families, and aged peacefully satisfied. Hoon, however, didn't fit within that form from childhood. He felt trapped while other children were happy following the roads set for them. The youngest of 3 siblings, Hoon was raised in a contradictory milieu between discipline and freedom. A former athlete, his father thought discipline and strength depended on athletics. He urged Hoon onto neighborhood teams, but the kid showed no enthusiasm. Chasing a ball was not his desire. He aspired to pursue goals others were too afraid to follow. On the other hand, his mother enjoyed music. From early on, Mom instilled in him a great passion for melody. Hoon was attracted to Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and the Beatles when most children his age were enjoying innocuous mainstream music. Music was not for him only a hobby. Lafayette's drabness was his only way out, but no one really got Shannon Hoon. He was the odd one out at school, long-haired, dressed differently and resistant to fit in. Teachers viewed him as a nightmare, always questioning authority with his impetuous and rebellious attitude. His friends either ignored him or feared him as they couldn't relate to someone so driven to separate apart. Hoon, however, was unconcerned. Should Lafayette reject his identity, he would seek to depart. But before he could run, he lost his way exactly at his hometown. He didn't only fight with his father and defy professors, he fell into a careless life of drug use, drinking and run-ins with law enforcement. He found himself in handcuffs more times than he could count, got drunk and smoked marijuana. At least 4 times, his mother had to get him out of jail. Every time, she dreaded the next call could be the one to alter things for all time. Hoon, however, was not afraid. He didn't consider repercussions, he didn't give tomorrow any thought. For him living meant loud, fearless, and never slowing down. Lafayette had grown too little for his dreams by 1990. Hoon understood it was time to go. He would not be yet another middle-aged guy seated at a run-down pub, remembering dreams long ago dead. Packing his backpack, picking up his instrument, and taking his self-written tunes, he left for Los Angeles, a city where people like him might either touch the stage lights or be consumed by them. Early profession. In 1990, Los Angeles was a world different from Lafayette, Indiana. Gone were the calm streets and the critical eyes of small-town life. Dreamers, drifters, and reckless people ready to gamble everything for a chance at the spotlight filled Los Angeles. It was a harsh location as well. Every day thousands of aspiring musicians came hoping to succeed. Nevertheless, most found disillusionment, addiction, or eternal oblivion. Arriving in the city with only a guitar, strong voice, and crazy conviction that he was meant for something wonderful, Shannon Hoon. No money, no strategy, no ties, only youthful audacity. But he had something most others lacked, a direct connection to one of the era's greatest rock stars. Hoon's sister had formerly attended school with Axl Rose, the frontman of Guns N' Roses. When she found that her younger brother had relocated to Los Angeles to follow music, she contacted Axl to beg him to keep an eye on him. Knowing Axl Rose was like clutching a golden ticket in a city where relationships mattered everything. Hoon soon befriended Axl, and found himself at the Guns N' Roses studio working on their Use Your Illusion double album. Axl not only invited him to sing backup vocals on songs like Don't Cry, November Rain, Live and Let Die, and The Garden, but he also Hoon feature in the legendary Don't Cry music video. Hoon has gone from a nameless rookie in LA to having his voice featured on one of the largest rock albums of the decade in only a little period, to getting his voice included on one of the largest rock albums of the decade. Hoon didn't want to live in anyone's shadow though, even with Axl Rose's backing. He had not arrived in Los Angeles to be Axl Rose's buddy. He was here to establish himself. That chance arrived at a tiny gathering where he coincidentally performed a song he had composed, Change. What Hoon was unaware of was that among the throng that evening were two musicians also looking for a leader to round out the band they were building, Brad Smith and Roger Stevens. Hoping to produce something fresh, the two had journeyed from Mississippi to Los Angeles. The moment they heard Hoon sing, they realized he was the missing piece they had sought. That very night, an offer was made. Blind Melon was formally born. Hoon serving as frontman, the band swiftly acquired drummer Glenn Graham and guitarist Christopher Thorne to round out the roster. But unlike most bands that found it difficult to get recognition by performing in tiny Los Angeles venues, Blind Melon chose a different path. They barely played live in Los Angeles. Rather, they concentrated on composing songs, producing demos, and going directly for a significant record deal. And they triumphed. In a few months, a 4-song demo of theirs fell into the hands of a well-connected music attorney in Los Angeles. What followed was like out of a dream. Though they had no significant tour or album, record companies were queuing up to sign them. Label officials treated them to supper, promising rich contracts. Blind Melon wasn't in a hurry to sign with just anyone. They had all the power. They eventually signed with Capitol Records in March 1991, not because it was the greatest label, but rather for the money it provided. Hoon and his bandmates were mistaken, however. If they believed a record deal signaled immediate success, they quickly discovered that wealth and celebrity were not so simple to come by. Blind Melon came into the studio under David Briggs, a producer recognized for his work with Neil Young, but things started to fall apart fast. The tapes were overly refined, removing the unrefined, free-spirited vitality the band had imagined. They believed individuals who did not really grasp their music were controlling it. So underwhelming was their first EP, the Sippin' Time Sessions, that they declined to publish it formally. Though not their last, it was their first significant disappointment. Hoon got a chance to tour with Guns N' Roses, an offer he couldn't pass up even though circumstances stayed unclear. His relationship with Axl Rose helped him to be asked to join Guns N' Roses on stage for some shows. Standing in front of tens of thousands of people, feeling the electric energy of a full stadium, Hoon understood this was what he wanted. Being on stage, living and breathing music in its most basic form, not merely recording in a studio or crafting songs, but the excitement of the stage opened another door, the all-night universe. Self-destruction, drugs, drink and partying. Shannon Hoon has entered the realm of genuine rock stars at only 24. What he didn't realize was that once you entered, it was almost impossible to escape unhurt. Success in one's career. Following their terrible first EP, a project they personally loathed, the band came to understand that Los Angeles was not where they would discover their genuine identity. They so departed the city of temptations, and went to Durham, North Carolina, where they rented a home known Sleepy House. Isolated from the outer world, it became their sanctuary, where they could completely immerse themselves in their music. Inside that house, the band spent 4 months just performing, composing, and really living as a rock band. Sleepless nights trying with new sounds, hazy of marijuana smoke long days, and passionate debates about the creative path of the band. All of it came together in the early beginnings of their first album, Blind Melon. Free from Los Angeles's superficial glitz, they had at last discovered themselves. Produced by Rick Parashar, who had previously worked with Pearl Jam and Temple of the Dog, the album was finished in early 1992 in Seattle. Blind Melon was officially launched in September 1992, including 13 tracks combining rock with folk, blues, and psychedelic. The band was optimistic, but the response was lackluster. Tones of Home, the first single, only had moderate popularity. The record didn't instantly cause chart waves. Until one song altered everything, it appeared as though their major break was fading. No Rain was chosen by Blind Melon as their second single, a seemingly happy song, hiding a profound feeling of sadness and despair. Its music video, however, made it a global sensation. Directed by Samuel Bayer, the same man who subsequently shot Smells Like Teen Spirit for Nirvana. The No Rain video presented the narrative of a little girl, in a bee costume, taunted for being odd, only to eventually discover a place where she was embraced. The straightforward yet profoundly relevant pictures resonated with millions, particularly those who had ever experienced outsider status. Blind Melon blew up the moment No Rain struck MTV, in June 1993. The video was aired constantly, fans rushed to buy the album, and within weeks, Blind Melon shot to number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling over 4 million copies and attaining platinum certification. From an undiscovered band, Blind Melon became a worldwide phenomenon. They regularly sold out big venues, went on a global tour, and covered Rolling Stone. Success brought unanticipated repercussions, however. Blind Melon was thrust into a never-ending touring grind. They played with Neil Young and Lenny Kravitz, opened for Guns N' Roses, performed at Lollapalooza, and showed up at many significant festivals. But for Shannon Hoon, the stage lights were a trap, not only exciting. Hoon fell into a perilous cycle under the pressure of an unrelenting timetable, media attention, and audience expectations. He loathed popularity, detested being called the singer of No Rain, and particularly abhorred the idea that Blind Melon was a one-hit wonder. The rock and roll lifestyle pulled him farther into disorder in line with this pressure. He partied non-stop, drank booze, LSD, and cocaine, and slowly lost control. Capitol Records became more and more worried. Though Hoon was turning into a ticking time bomb, they hoped Blind Melon would make use of their unexpected popularity. Blind Melon, meanwhile, kept pushing on artistically despite this chaos. Determined to show they were more than a passing sensation, they started working on their second album. The second was a maelstrom of chaos if the first album had been a success. Blind Melon moved to New Orleans to make their new album, away from LA's distractions, but it ended up being the worst choice they could have made. Hoon had little opposition to the attractions of New Orleans, a city of excess. Hoon immersed himself in drugs, partying, and never-ending excess, as the band attempted to concentrate on their craft. Recording sessions turned into battlefields pitting artistic drive against the catastrophic turmoil of addiction. Released in August 1995, their second album, Soup Ambitious, it included folk, jazz, bluegrass, and a darker tone than their first. Sales were surprisingly low, and it lacked a No Rain level hit. Panicking, the band's management hurried them back on tour to increase album sales, but they overlooked one important reality: Shannon Hoon was unprepared. Desperate to take back control, Hoon checked into rehab just before the tour started. Temptation remained, however, and by months he was back under its control. No one anticipated this to be his last tour. No one thought he would never wake up again, following a terrible performance in Houston. All they knew was that as the tour bus made its way into New Orleans, inevitable disaster lay ahead. Private life. Shannon Hoon had not only a strong voice on stage, in real life, he was a very complicated person, a soul both vulnerable and sensitive, but also bold and stubborn. Amid the addictions, the all-night parties, and the hedonistic lifestyle of a rock star, Hoon, a man who yearned for love and connection, had another side.